more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. Oh, there is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. And I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Let me make this light over here.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder on this beautiful Sunday. One moment. Oh, I'm okay. We welcome all. If you are a new visitor, please email our office administrator, Amy Zen, and let us know you found us. You will find her email in the Zoom chat. Our church website has a great deal of information about the church and our activities. And now please ensure that your microphones remain muted and join us for worship.
Good morning, everyone. And a special shout out and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist friends in Las Cruces, New Mexico. If you're from Las Cruces, give us a big wave out there. Good morning, welcome. So glad you're joining us this morning. I am speaking to you today from my home in Fort Collins, which is built on the land of the Arapaho and the Cheyenne Native people. Native people from this area were resettled into Wyoming on the Wind River Reservation. I tell you this to honor those from whom our ancestors took this land and to remember them and the truth of our history. Native people have much to teach us to live in the spirit of thanksgiving and giving thanks each and every day. Could it be they were attempting to share this great teaching to the new, strange white people from across the sea? Quoting from the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, the sunrise ceremony in our Potawatomi way of sending gratitude into the world, to recognize all that we are given and to offer our choicest thanks in return. In the Onondaga language, this is known as the words that come before all else. It begins, today we have gathered, and when we look upon the faces around us, we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now let us bring our minds together as one, as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. So come, my friends, let us bring our minds and hearts together as one.
Gather the spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined. With body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace,
Well, sometimes things happen, and right now my screen is frozen, and so I can't see the script. We're about to do our chalice lighting, and if one of my teammates could help me out here, I'd really appreciate it.
If you have a personal chalice or candle near your computer, please get ready to light it. We invite you to type into the chat box where your chalice is lit, the street or neighborhood, or what city, if you're joining us from outside Boulder County. Good morning. I am Katie Fitzgerald from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces, New Mexico. My husband and I moved to the Southwest over a dozen years ago, principally to get away from the white stuff. A lifelong New Englander, my husband has developed an allergy to snow. He calls it a four-letter word. Imagine our consternation when a few weeks ago we woke up to a couple of inches of soft white powder. Before Halloween, no less. Definitely history making in Las Cruces. But it also served as a reminder of how swiftly seasons can change, which brings me to the following chalice lighting words from Ben Sewell. As the wild wind bites. Let us hold a quiet moment together as our chalice is lit. As the wild wind bites, so does the still flame warm us. As the deep snows block our doors, so does the gentle flame bring us out. As the crackling cold air stops our breath, so does the radiant flame draw from us the words we need to give and to receive. Words of greeting, words of comfort, words of solace, words to challenge our minds, and words to bring us to action. Let us gaze upon this, our common flame, so that we remember who we are and what we can do when we are together.
We now invite all those gathered in your various locations to join together in fellowship and community as we all say aloud our congregation's covenant. The words are on your online order of service and in the screen. Ready? We gather
Together in fellowship, speak truth
to
to each other,
to reach
Reach
out
out
and
and
touch
touch
one another, to
share
share
with each other, and to
to
seek
seek
the
truth
truth
divine.
divine.
So
So
be
be
it.
it. And in the spirit of gratitude and deep connection with all of life, let us honor all that life brings in this moment. All of the pain, worries, anxieties, and all of the joys, satisfactions, contentment, and happiness. So, what is on your mind and heart today? In this quiet moment of your own thoughts, let us hold each other in community as we rest in silence. Now, my friends, let us turn our minds and hearts to those that we love, holding them with our love and acknowledging all that they may be going through. And I invite you to share your concerns in the chat as well at this time. And I want to lift up one that I know about ahead of time, and that is that Henry Kroll will be having hip replacement surgery. I believe on Tuesday. So, Henry, may your surgery go smoothly and may your healing come with ease. I know of a few other surgeries happening this week, and may everyone's surgeries go well. Any illnesses, may you be healed. And of course, as always, we lift up all those who are suffering from the pandemic in the complicated ways that COVID is bringing not only illness, but job loss, but the inability to spend time with our loved ones for Thanksgiving. May we create a container of love among each and every one of us to hold each other during this challenging and difficult time. Concerns for those suffering in the pandemic and concerns for our democracy, thank you. Concerns for all those who are testing positive for COVID. Wishing well to Sharon and Bill and George and Mary. Needing relief from family stress. Oh, yes. And Rabbit, I will keep your daughter in our thoughts and prayers. Concerns for our democracy. Yes, and a special shout out and gratitude for our caring ministry. Sweet gifts yesterday to many people, lovely cards and messages over recent months. Thanks, Mary and George. So keep those wishes and thoughts coming, keep sharing as you can. Big deal surgery happening on Tuesday. Eleanor, you're in our thoughts and prayers. Sending you lots of love. May you heal well. And I invite you now to bring to mind and into your heart the things which you are grateful for and that bring you joy. So, thankful that my 80-plus-year-old sister and husband are recovering from COVID-19. Oh, yes. Happy birthday to my mom, Karen, on Monday. How wonderful. Gratitude. Oh, we did that one. Tuesday is my Aunt Anna Erickson's 102 birthday. How cool is that? Wish I could be with her, but sending my love. Great. Appreciation for connections through Zoom and phone. I agree. Oh, great news. Elliot is home safe from college. Glad to have him in the house. Yahoo! Welcome, Elliot. Glad you're back. Thanks for grandchildren and blessed by crispy autumn mornings. Blessed by crispy autumn mornings. Wonderful. So wonderful. As always, continue to post however you would like. And I'm going to invite everyone, if you feel like it, to just hold your hands up to your screen so that we can hold hands, creating our container of love, not only with our congregation at the UU Church of Boulder, but with our partners and friends with the congregation with Las Cruces. Know that holding your hands is symbolic of the love, of the container of love that we are holding each other. May it be so, now and always. And now we will have a lovely prayer and meditation from Reverend Dr. Xolani Kacela from the Las Cruces
Yeah,
congregation.
just for this one day.
And I'm going to remind everyone that if you are not muted already, to please mute yourselves. Thank you.
I invite you to join me for a moment of prayer and meditation here this morning as we contemplate Thanksgiving and the holiday season that is before us. I am Reverend Xolani Kacela, the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces, and I am delighted to be with you this morning to share this blessing for today's service. Spirit of life and love, we gather today in hopes of a blessed Thanksgiving season. We know that we enter this morning with heavy hearts, filled with anxiety and unknowing and uncertainty, living still with this great pandemic that has overwhelmed our community, our country, and the world. We're living with the uncertainty of the political future, uncertainty of racial unrest, and serious division within our nation. But yet we know we are people of faith and a people of hope. And we are getting through this, will get through this, and have gotten through it before. Today we stand with our past behind us as a source of wisdom, our present right with us, and the future that is calling us into the yet to be. We stand on the shoulders of people who have done great things, have overcome great difficulties, have endured trials and tribulations, great and many. Things such as indentured servitude, slavery, living in covered wagons, coming over the prairies in the freezing cold in the summer, enduring whips on their backs, chains on their feet, and all sorts of miseries associated with just a primitive type of civilization. Those people have given us the strength to know that we can get through these times and that we can join together, unified as people who believe in each other and trust each other, and know that we have the gifts and the strengths and the graces that make us a people who can do mighty things when we put our minds to it and we stand unified together as one. So on this Sunday, let us remember our past and remember that we are called into a great future. And as we prepare to celebrate Thanksgiving, let us open our hearts to the multitude of blessings that have been bestowed upon us over this past several months, and find ways to discover those and to recall those and to think of the small things, the love and the compassion, the care, the justice that we stand for. And let us look forward to Thanksgiving as a time that we can be with our families, often in virtual settings, but still together, and with our friends. And let us reach out to our neighbors and strangers and invite them to join us in some way so that we can celebrate this sacred time in the history of our nation and history of this community of banding together, bonding together as one, and filling our hearts with gratitude. As we prepare for the Christmas season that is also upon us, let us not look at Black Friday as a time just to go spend, but a time to get activated and to stand upon the shoulders of those with great faith and to stand up and do something good on that day for other people. And let us find ways to share our bounty with those who need us. Find ways to reach out and extend a hand, and to remember that our Unitarian Universalist forebearers are with us, are lighting the way, and giving us the strength, the courage, and the perseverance and persistence to make this a great year end. I thank all those of you from the congregation in Boulder, in the Las Cruces, our visitors and friends from wherever they are, for standing by us today and standing unified on this great Thanksgiving Sunday. Let us count our blessings, let us be well, and let us go together in love. We ask this prayer in the name of all persons, present and absent, known and unknown, remembered and forgotten, and all helpers of humankind. May we all say together in unison wherever we are. Amen. May it be so. And Ashe. Happy Thanksgiving.
And after a level 3 diagnostic, I am back. And I'd like to share with you this reading from Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope.
Don't give up hope.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
Don't you give up.
Don't you give up.
Keep moving on.
Keep moving on.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Lift up your eyes.
Lift up your eyes.
Don't you despair.
Don't you despair.
Look up ahead.
Look up ahead.
The path is there.
The path is there.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I know you're scared.
I know you're scared.
And I'm scared too.
And I'm scared too.
But here I am.
But here I am.
Right next to you.
Right next to you.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love.
I don't know how. Reverend again.
Good morning, everybody. If you're not muted, this is a good time to put yourself in the most worshipful position, which is muted. My name is Reverend Jeremy Nickel. Wonderful to be here with our people in Boulder and our friends in Las Cruces. What a special, wonderful moment for us all as we move towards a little break of Thanksgiving. As far as Thanksgiving goes, I grew up just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, right smack in the middle of Pilgrim country. And so along with all of my family's traditions around the big meal, I got a huge helping of Pilgrim mythology every November. Like many of you, I cut out paper turkeys and decorated them in art class. I made pilgrim hats and native headdresses out of thick colored paper and dressed up in completely culturally inappropriate costumes. And of course, heard endless stories about the Mayflower. But living where I did, my class also made an annual trip to Plymouth Plantation, the living village that claimed to keep alive the original spirit of these people who we were told had birthed America. There we saw a group of honestly kind of dirty looking white people dressed in old clothing, churning butter, working in the garden, cooking and cleaning, all as they supposedly would have those many years ago. It was quite a story. As I would come to learn, most of what I was being taught in school and even at Plymouth Plantation was mythology, not truth. Every country has founding mythology. That is nothing particularly exceptional about us. But as I've said before, I believe that just as much as the world is made up of atoms, it's also made up of stories. And the stories we tell have an enormous effect on the reality of the world we live in. And this mythology, we are taught, is unambiguously bound up with the idea of white supremacy. So when we get the main course of Pilgrim stories, they come along with a side dish of unconscious bias against the native people, and in fact, all non-white people who came here for reasons other than free will. Our denomination's previous General Assembly had a strong focus on attempting to name the ways our spiritual forebearers benefited from and helped foster these myths, so that we could begin the essential work of telling a new story. So let me begin by telling you a more factual story of what happened on that famous and much talked about first Thanksgiving in 1621. And to tell that story correctly, we really need to back up about 7 years. Because in all truth, the Pilgrims were hardly the first explorers to cross the Atlantic in search of these mysterious lands. Obviously, Christopher Columbus had been somewhat close to that same area well over 100 years before, as had Verrazano, as had Chinese and North African fishermen, and many others, including English merchants looking for exotic plants and spices to bring back to Europe. And on one such spice hunting voyage in or around 1614, the English sailors that visited the area we now know of as the coast of Massachusetts also kidnapped Native Americans from the Wampanoag tribe to sell as slaves back in Europe. In this encounter, or another like it around the same time, the Europeans also managed to leave behind their germs, beginning an epidemic of death that quickly swept through the East Coast and eventually across the North, Central, and South American continents, and over the next half dozen years would wipe out entire villages and tribes, decimating the native population. One of the natives kidnapped and brought to Europe in this particular raid was named Tisquantum, although you've probably heard of him referred to in history by his anglicized name, Squanto. Tisquantum turns out to be one of those unlikely pivotal human beings in history. After surviving a harrowing journey in captivity to England and being sold to an owner in Spain, he managed to escape, to make his way back to England and then Newfoundland, where in 1619 he was able to get on board a ship back to his homeland. Tragically, after all that effort to get back to his people, when he arrived at home, he found only death. The world as he knew it had been wiped out in his absence, and very few people survived. But clearly, fate and history were not done with Tisquantum. About a year later, after being severely blown off course, a ship called the Mayflower appeared on those same shores. And far from the majestic leap onto Plymouth Rock as I had heard it told, what actually occurred was not nearly as romantic. How is this for a more truthful first contact between the Pilgrims and the native people? After a small search party rowed ashore, they were met by one lone Native American who, to their complete astonishment, greeted them in English, introduced himself as Samoset, and asked for some beer. He had been wandering south from Maine looking for survivors from the plague that had wiped out his people, and had spent time with British explorers that had shared their ale and language with him. Both he had taken to. The next day, he introduced the Pilgrims to Tisquantum, who he had met on his journey and who he described as the only surviving member of the tribe that used to live in this place, which they called Patuxet, but would eventually be renamed Plymouth by the European invaders. While the plague was a horror to the Native Americans, the Pilgrims could not believe their good luck in finding the area so bare of resistance. In fact, they found fields already prepared and abandoned. And that is part of what made their survival possible, the death that had preceded them. Even with these tragically gained advantages, Tisquantum knew the Pilgrims had little chance of surviving long in this foreign land. So he stayed with them and helped introduce them to native agriculture techniques, like using fish as fertilizer and how to grow corn, and perhaps most importantly, introduced them to Chief Massasoit, the leader of the closest surviving group of Wampanoag still in the area. The Pilgrims made a treaty with his tribe that they would help protect each other from common enemies, and this, as Ramona Peters, the present-day Wampanoag tribe's historic preservation officer, tells the story, is the true beginning of the first Thanksgiving, or at least of the historical event that twisted into the myth you and I know so well. Because the following fall, the Wampanoags heard something unlike anything they had ever heard before coming from the Pilgrim settlement. It was the sound of dozens of guns and heavy cannons being fired at once. So Chief Massasoit gathered 90 warriors, and they rushed to the source of this noise, assuming their new friends were under attack and needed their assistance. But to their bewilderment, when they arrived on the scene, they found the Pilgrims wildly firing their guns and cannons into the air. Through a translator, they were able to ascertain that the Pilgrims were not under attack, but rather were celebrating their first successful harvest, much as some modern cultures do now, by firing off all of their guns. Rather than clear things up, however, this explanation completely baffled Massasoit and the warriors, and so they set up camp to observe and make sure the Pilgrims weren't actually up to something else because they had already been deceived by other Europeans. And so over the next 4 days, they moved freely throughout the settlement, trading goods and food, and perhaps even eating meals in similar space. But there was no grand meal that they were invited to share, and there was certainly no turkey, gravy, stuffing, or cranberries. Those all came about 100 years later, in the late 18th century, as the Boston Brahmin were writing the story they wanted the world to know about the founding of their newly independent country, to bake their story into the core DNA of the newly forming United States of America. And in that point in Boston, they really did love turkey and cranberries and gathered every fall to eat them in a Thanksgiving ritual. So the story was backdated a bit. And this pretty little lie of a shared meal offered from the successful and hardworking white Pilgrims to the needy and dependent native peoples was born and sewn into the fabric of who we believe ourselves to be. And it began an unconscious but ever-present narrative of white supremacy that has haunted this nation and how we tell our story ever since. I believe you can draw a straight line from this lie to slavery, to Jim Crow, to the murder of Emmett Till, and the need for the Black Lives Matter movement today. Because all of the other stories that counter this narrative have been silenced, ignored, and erased. From the incredibly rich network of cultures that pre-existed European invasion in these lands, to the explorers from nations other than WASPy England who contributed to the early American experiment, to the lives of the millions of black and brown-skinned bodies that were forcibly brought here in chains and shackles and denied freedom, the very thing the myth said we stood for. Their truths and their wisdom and their guidance for the future are all lost to us because their stories did not fit the lie of who we were. And so instead, in their place, at the center of the incredible American tale, we always find a bunch of hardworking white people who did it pretty much on their own. From the Pilgrims at Plymouth, to the settlers of the Midwest in stagecoaches, to the cowboys of the Wild West and gold miners of California, it's always told as a white story. No mention of a plague that cleared the way of native people by the millions, or essential help from the few natives still around, or the hardest of all labor contributed by enslaved Africans and barely free Asian and Hispanic people with no compensation, or the countless contributions of immigrants from every other country, culture, and skin color. As my colleague, Reverend David Schwartz, put it in a reflection he shared a few years back, quote, "We gather at Thanksgiving, in some sense, to retell the creation myth of our country. In this myth is our very best and our very worst. A boldness, a care for the common good, a wish to say we before I. Yet, from even before the first Thanksgiving feast, it's a story of theft and violence and a ruthlessly narrow definition of who we really means," unquote. The colonialists had come seeking freedom, and in that we identify with them. But it was freedom only for themselves. In every generation forward from that day to this, the people living in this land that became America struggled always with the question, who is freedom for? Black persons were taken from their native Africa to become slaves. Immigration laws were written explicitly to prohibit non-Western Europeans. Women could not vote even a century ago. In many states right now, people can be legally fired or evicted merely for loving someone of the same gender. The Universalist minister Clarence Skinner wrote a century ago, quote, "The fight for freedom is never won. Each generation must win for itself the right to emancipate itself from its own tyrannies, which are ever unprecedented. Therefore, those who have been reared in freedom bear a tremendous responsibility to the world to win an ever larger and more important liberty. So may it be for us. We are the inheritors of our liberty, won with sweat and labor and blood of generations before us. May we be a people committed to winning an ever larger liberty for the generations that follow. Who is freedom for? May we answer today and always, every one of us," unquote. But who freedom is for, once again, is the question of the day. When children remain in cages at our border to the south, when we already hear plans to overturn Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court, when Black and brown skin lives are treated differently than white ones in the criminal justice system and by many law enforcement officers, we must ask again, who is freedom for? Who is America for? What story is our truth? That's really what it comes down to. Free for everyone or just some? All voices welcome or not? For too long, we've allowed the pernicious lie of white supremacy to infect the story of who we are, and the consequences continue to be real for everyone, right up to this election, which was defined by two different camps that could not even agree on what the true story was about current events playing out right in front of our eyes. The inevitable consequence of centuries of investing in a false narrative and locking so many voices out of the conversation of what truth is. I mean, can you believe that up until recently, mainstream America refused to believe the overwhelming testimony of African Americans about their treatment at the hands of law enforcement? Not until everyone ended up with video cameras in their pockets that provided us with incontrovertible proof did many believe that this could be happening in the land of the free. Two stories, two Americas, no more. It is long beyond time to welcome all voices into the story of this country. And if we're going to live in a country that is truly free for everyone, then it must be built on true stories. So we must not only make it possible for all voices to be heard, but we must actively counter the old lie of white supremacy wherever it rears its head. This Thanksgiving, which promises to be like none other before it anyway, why not take the first step by not only refusing to retell the lie of this country's founding, but to begin telling a truer, more life-giving story? When you gather around the table, or the Zoom chat with your family, remember these words of our UUA president, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who recently wrote, quote, "In truth, Thanksgiving celebrations have a long and rich history that predates the landing of the Pilgrims and the founding of the United States. There are many, many ways that we can connect in gratitude and celebrate the abundance of the fall harvest as a community without celebrating an ahistorical colonial origin story. This year, let us be grateful in a genuine manner. Let our gratitude flow from our deep, ongoing commitment to justice and equity. Let our gratitude grow from the opportunities we have to be together authentically, whether virtually or in person." Unquote. May we be a people so bold. Amen. May it be so, and Ashe.
At this time, both churches will ask you to share your gifts for those around us who need our support. In Las Cruces, we ask our members to contribute to Change for Change. This quarter, we are giving to the Donna Ana County Colonias Development Council. You may send your check by mail to the church. Please put in the memo line, Change for Change, or you can use the website and follow the directions there.
And at the UU Church of Boulder, in the month of November, we are sharing our plate offering with Community Food Share. Community Food Share is a food bank fighting hunger in Boulder and Broomfield counties by providing access to fresh, nutritious food through our local partners and our on-site and mobile pantries. Hunger is the reality for 1 in 9 people in Boulder and Broomfield counties. That's 41,000 people, and 9,000 of those are children. Since the pandemic hit in March, we have distributed over 1 million pounds of food each month, the highest monthly total since we opened our doors nearly 4 decades ago. And these record-breaking numbers are evidence that more and more community members are needing help for the first time. In fact, Community Food Share continues, we expect a 35% increase in demand for food from our food bank for months to come. We accept all sizes of food donations, from a single box to a whole truckload. And with every dollar donated, Community Food Share can provide 3 meals, and 1 hour of volunteering provides 80 meals. You can make a donation now using the link posted in our chat, or by sending a check to UCB, or by taking your camera up to the screen and capturing that symbol that's about to appear. Please be as generous as you can. We will now receive the offering. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise, for the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise, for the wonder of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise, for the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
I came to Las Cruces from Ohio by way of West Virginia, Massachusetts, and Arizona. The spiritual quest that led me to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces has been even more convoluted. So you can appreciate why the following words from Laura Thompson resonate for me today. Across the distance, the light from within me shines, sending love to all. Across the distance, your light is fuel that warms me and helps to keep my own light burning. Together, we keep the light of community burning bright.
joy to have both of our congregations together for worship this morning, over 200 strong at one point during the service. And now we invite all of you to stay with us in our Zoom rooms for a time of online fellowship and discussion. For the Boulder congregation, the Ministerial Search Committee will be hosting the main room for a final cottage meeting. These are the times we've shared where those who wanted to discuss and share their hopes and needs for our next settled minister have a chance to have that conversation. So if you'd like to do that, even if you've already done one, if you thought of something new or just want to hear what's going on, when we break into the individual rooms, just stay in the main Zoom room and you'll be directed from there. And Barb and Fred are here to walk us through the transition process. Put your gut, there you go, unmuted. Okay.
There we are. Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm Fred Cole.
I'm Barb Richards. Good morning.
And just to, if you are new with this, what's happening right now is that we're being sorted into separate groups of about 8 to 10 people. And that's a chance to get together, get yourself a cup of coffee and chat with us. And we certainly welcome our friends from Las Vegas or Las Cruces, sorry, moved you a bit, to join with us and